Hello everyone. Welcome to Kat's podcast. I am Kat, your host. Today I am going to start this part 1 of my testimonials. So, I guess I will start as early as I can remember. I don't have very many memories of my life before around 3 years of age. I guess I will start with some background. I am Kat, the second daughter and child before my 2 younger brothers came along. My dad and mom married when my dad was 20 years old, and my mom was 16 years old. They built a home about the time I was born, and that is where they still live today, as well as I am back living at that place as well. My dad worked at a place called Jeff Boat where they build barges since he turned 18 years old until he started working for American Commercial Barge Lines, which owned Jeff Boat. That is when he was promoted to the boss and put on salary. He actually retired from there not so long ago. He was foreman over the warehouse and part-time over the steel yard. My mom was a stay-at-home mother at the time until we got older, and then she worked for a bank. They were very active in our hometown church, which my dad's family had attended for years. My mom and my Aunt Dolores pretty much took care of the dinners and Bible schools, Sunday schools, Christmas plays, and such, so needless to say my cousins and our family were pretty active with the church as we were growing up. Also, my dad was a volunteer fireman, so we were like a family with them growing up as well, because the women took care of planning the chili suppers, fireman festivals, and collecting for the children's crusade each year, so all fireman kids were the main part in working at those events. But rewind for a minute. I just remember that when I was really young, I just wanted to be a homebody and stay home on my tricycle most of the time, and that is when I was the happiest. I remember at night when it was time for bed, I would lay in my bed and listen to this owl behind the house each night. I remember each night before I fell asleep, I felt like my body was very light and it would start floating up in the air above me, even though I felt like part of me was so heavy that it would stay on the bed. Weird, I know, and even more weird to explain, but I guess the easiest way is it was like I could feel my spirit floating out of my body is more suitable for how it felt. Also, I would have this same occurring dream of Jesus, and he and I would be in the woods behind our house, and there was a big hill we would walk up, and he would be in front of me, and about halfway up he would turn around to see where I was, and I would always be lagging behind, so he would reach out to me for me to grab his hand to where he could pull me up the hill. About the age of, I would think, maybe 7 or 8 years old, there was this Kings Island commercial that always came on, and it was so dramatic and would say, "Come and ride the beast at Kings Island." Well, every time it came on I would beg to go, and finally, my dad took us. I know we waited in that line, just me and my dad, while the rest of the family waited for what seemed an eternity. Finally, we were getting pretty close to the front, and I remember seeing this one ride off in a distance that really looked scary, and I said to my dad, "Look at that scary ride, Dad." He looked at me with a confused look and said, "Yeah, that is the one we are going to ride." I was in shock and immediately said, "Oh no, Daddy, I can't ride that, there is no way." He had taken his cap off and sat it on my head, and I went to pull it down on my head because it felt weird just sitting barely on top, and he took it and sat it back on top and told me to leave it just like that, while the guy letting people in to ride looked at me and my cap, and then they had a line drawn on a sign that read, "You must be this tall to ride, look at that scary ride, Dad." "Yes, you can. I am your daddy, I've got you, so just hold my hand." I did what he told me, and the ride took off at pretty good speed, and we started heading up that ungodly hill. It was like click, 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 pretty fast, but as we went to the top the fast click slowed so slow that it was like click, and a long moment, then click, until I knew we were heading over the peak of that mountain, and then we were about to free fall for a long way. I squeezed his hand, squeezed my eyes shut as hard as I could, scooted as far into that little compartment we were in, and we were off. I seriously felt my body sliding out, and I held on as tight as I possibly could until it was over. When we were getting off, I looked at my dad and said, "I think I need to throw up." He told me to hold on and was quickly pulling me out of there, and I saw my mom and other kids waiting as I asked, "Now?" He told me to hold on, "We are almost there," and we reached my mom and the others, and he put me on the back side of everyone as if to shield me from anyone seeing, and then he said, "Okay, now." And I just started projectile throwing up. While I was doing that, I heard my mom pretty angry, getting on to my dad saying, "I told you she was too little." And I started to feel bad for my dad because I hounded him for months to take me to ride the beast, and he did so. When I finally finished throwing up, I came up as I wiping my mouth and said, "Okay, Dad, are you ready to go again?" He and my mom both looked at me very confused, asking, "I told you she was too little." My dad giggled a bit and my mom quietly said, "Are you serious?" My dad said that was enough for the day. I forgot before this story, I wanted to tell you when I was around 2 or 3 years old, We went to my grandpa's in Florida so my mom could meet her half-brother whom she had never met, who was already 15 or 16 years old. We knew we were going to be going swimming in his in-ground pool, and when we got there my sister and I already had our bathing suits on. Well, my dad and mom said they were going inside to change into their swimming suits, and my sister and I were to wait for them to come back before we got into the pool. I remember looking around and I saw her brother sitting on the low diving board next to the high diving board, and as I went on around the pool and saw the biggest curvy slide I had ever seen. I climbed the ladder to the top and got on the slide, and off I went, not realizing till halfway down that it went into the water, and I wasn't scared of water and I was too little to understand, so the only thing I can recall thinking was I was going to be in trouble because I was supposed to wait for my parents to get back. As I was sitting on the bottom wondering when they would be out there, I had my eyes wide open, and I could hear every breath I was taking as I watched bubbles floating to the top. My grandpa asked my sister if I could swim and she told him no, so he said to his son, "Go get her, Marty." He dove in and swam to the other end and came down to the bottom where he scooped me up, and I know this makes no sense whatsoever, but I was breathing, and if not, what actually happened? Well, as I got older, I started to rebel, wanting to do what the older kids were, and being the second kid of 4, I didn't feel as though anyone was really paying attention anyway. I started sneaking out of the house and running away from home, and when I was 12 years old, my mom, after finding out where I was in the projects, I asked her to just bring me some clothes and a vacuum cleaner because where I was needed to be vacuumed, and just leave me and at least she would know where I was. I ended up quitting school at 16 and watching my nephew and 2 of my second cousins, because I was staying with my cousin by that time who needed a babysitter so he and his wife could work. I ended up getting emancipated, which is the judge made me a legal adult, though I wasn't 18 years old yet. I got pregnant at 17 and married 9 days before I had my first baby, whom was the absolute best thing that had ever happened to me, and I was completely head over heels in love with her, and she made my life worth living. I worked at a little store in our town to get by while my husband was in the woods most of the time hunting. We had neighbors that came in once a month or every couple of months who we started to become friends with, and it seems as though life started to take an ugly turn from there. Until next time, family. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.